Okay, so this is part 2 of the printing video. Here are some objects that you'll need to create a print. First of all, we have the ink for printing. It's block printing ink. The reason why you use this kind of ink is because it has a different viscosity to normal acrylic ink. It tends to be a little more tackier, and when you roll it out, it stays wet a little longer for printing. You can experiment with acrylics, but they might tend to dry up a little too fast. And the nature of printing is that you use quite a lot of ink. We'll show you how to do this, but basically you have a tool. You could just use a knife, but you take some of the ink out of the pot, and that you'll need a flat surface or a piece of glass and some rollers, because you need to roll out the ink before you apply it to your board. Some other handy things to have would be paper towel, so you can clean this object, and some water on hand as well. You'll also need a little printing station. So we've just used a backboard here, so just to catch some of the ink in case it gets onto the surface. Your print that you've created, your printing block, and then you'll need some other tools. You can use clean the other one that you use for the ink if you only have one, or another rolling pin, anything to add pressure basically. And then we will show you how to coat the print. So the paper as well that we're using for this particular print is a watercolor paper. It's a hot press paper. These are quite expensive papers, as you probably know, so perhaps when you start off, just a cartridge paper or standard watercolor papers are good to experiment with. Something a little thicker is better, because if the paper's too thin, it tends to break. So just experiment for now, but perhaps start with something cheaper and then work your way up to a more expensive paper. So without getting too technical, we just sort of did 3 blobs at this point of color. Doesn't really matter at this point, just experiment a bit, and you can just use one color, or we're using 3. And what you need to do is start rolling out the ink, because you basically want to get this sort of certain viscosity and texture. So right now you can see that it's got these sort of long pulley lines in it. So what you want to end up with is tiny little bubbled lines. So this would just say that there's a little bit too much ink currently on the actual board. So you just need to keep working it until you get the right kind of texture that you need for printing. Okay, so Jim's decided to use this as his first board, the textural board, and he's doing a 2-tone. You can just do 1 color, 2 colors, you can mix the colors, but the idea is that you put it on with the roller, because then you get this perfect coverage of ink. This part is where we wet the paper, and you just recycle a bottle or do something. You just make it a little damp, and just let it sit for a minute. You can also take off some excess water with a paper towel, and this just softens the fibers and helps the paper pick up the print a little easier. You actually put the print on the bottom and the paper on the top. This seems to be the best way to create a relief print. And today Jim's using a roller. You can just use these little rollers as well if you want more of a harder pressure. And you can experiment. You can use, you can just push down or use a roller or different things. They're quite easy to pick up. Where did you get that one from?
Oh, I just bought it from Amazon.
Okay, yeah.
But you can buy them at Art to Art.
Art to Art, okay.
And Premier Art.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to check the print and see how we've gone this first run. Okay, so we've done a really simple print. Experiment number 1. We're going to do another one too. Okay, so we're doing another print, and
2 colour.
It's 2 color, and we're going to try and fade it in the middle. So you can see how the ink picks up depending on how flat the surface is. Sort of like some little dips, but that's sort of part of, I guess, the nature of printing, is that it's not a perfect, it's more of a textural piece. So you don't want to perfect it so much that you might as well paint it. You kind of want to keep some of the texture. Okay, so he's going with another colour, and he's going to sort of roll over the blue a bit as well to blend it in the middle. So initially you sort of put the ink on, and you'll have to go back a couple of times, so maybe 2 or 3 times back on the roller to pick up a little bit more ink, and then come back and put another layer. There's quite a lot of coverage on the blue here, and Dad will probably do another couple of coats here, because even when you print it won't pick up everything, so you'll still get a textural kind of print. The way paper has been dampened a little.
Yeah.
So we're gonna, now this one's quite flat, the print. It's a really thin cardboard, so when you push down on it like this, it might pick up a little bit of the background as well, which is sort of a nice textural feel. If you wanted less of the back texture being picked up, then you'd need a thicker cardboard, but we'll see how this goes. And go over it for quite a while. Be patient, like give it a good push. You can kind of see a little bit of the texture coming through. Okay, so we're going to have a look and see what it's like. Oh, that's great. There we go. That's a pretty good print. There's actually not too much of the background coming through, a little bit on the sides. If you wanted more, you'd have to push it a little harder, but you can see how the paper, the texture of the paper makes a difference.
Yeah, you can see the dimples.
And it just creates this lovely rustic effect. So that's the result.
We could use the hot press one as well.
Yeah, so so if you use more of the hot press, you'll get less of this other texture coming through. So you can experiment with all the different types of paper, but using a thicker paper tends to work a little better. So there you go.
Cool.
Okay, so next week we were thinking of doing some lino cut relief printing. Relief printing is basically any surface that you cut away the lines. So you can use a lino board, which is quite hard, or silicone boards, which are quite soft, and it can give you some really nice effects. You can print these then as many times as you like, so they become handy little assets to have. We thought it'd be great that we could do maybe a birthday card or a Christmas card to save a bit of money this year, or you could do a little print that you could give as a gift. The other thing you can do is actually do like a basic black print, and then you can fill in the lines by hand, like this example here. This is a nice way of connecting printing to some more traditional techniques of painting.